Welcome to This Is Horror. I'm guest host Dan Howarth, and I'm joined today by Bob Pastorella
Hello, everybody.
and Jasper Bark. Hi, Jasper.
Hi. Yeah, I have to confess right from the off, I'm not actually recording this from my home. I'm up visiting my mum. So this is being recorded in the Cumbrian Women's Correctional Facility, which has superb broadband. I'm actually in a broom closet, as you can see. But if the screws come, I'll be like,
And in that vein, Jesus, we are here to interview Michael David Wilson about his brand new novel, Daddy's Boy. So, Michael, welcome to your own podcast.
Thank you very much. I've heard good things about the co-host, Bob Pastorella, and the less we say about the original host, the better. But good to be here.
Good to have you. Good to have you. I am here as the ghost of podcast past to help you promote your new novel. So let's crack on, shall we, and talk about Daddy's Boy. So, Michael, you're the host of this podcast normally, and one of the things that you like to do with guests is when you get them on, you say, tell us about your first experiences with story. Now, I'm pretty sure as a guest host in the past, I've asked you this question. So, one of the things I want to ask you to kick us off is tell us about your experiences with story since the last time you were the guest on your own podcast. So, what have you taken in that's new, different, challenging? What's changed in your writing?
Or in my writing or in my reading?
Either, whichever you think is most impactful.
Okay, so I guess the last time that I was a guest on my podcast would have been for House of Bad Memories, so about a year and a half ago. And because I don't always recall, wow, what was I reading 1.5 years ago? Let's just start with what I'm doing immediately, what I've been reading recently. So I recently read a author called Sayaka Murata, who has written the Japanese book Convenience Store Woman, and she also wrote the short story collection Life Ceremonies. And I'm always looking for new and interesting authors. And what I particularly like about her work is, like what I would say that the best stories are, it's so difficult to put in a genre box. I mean, on some levels to begin with, it almost seems like literary commentary on life in Japan, but then there's elements of bizarro and almost what I term WTF fiction. But what I love, and what I love about a lot of dark comedy, which is probably relevant for what we'll be talking about today, is that everything she does, she plays it very straight. So it's not slapstick. It's not being like, oh, look at me. This is a funny joke. But you'll take a bizarre or a weird predicament and then you'll play it as if this is just how life is. So in one of the stories, what's in vogue, what's very fashionable is buying clothes that are made out of human hair. That is the new thing. That is what everybody's into. That's the must wear item of the season. And then I also believe, like, and this is from the Life Ceremony short story collection, there's a piece where people are consuming human meat. And there's like kind of conversations about, people eating animal meat and human meat, and then vegetarianism and veganism. And it's like, well, she's like, well, in the past, people were a bit funny about eating animal meat, but then that went away and more people did it, and now it's human meat. That's what we do, and that's actually part of the life ceremony. The way that you celebrate somebody's life is you go to the funeral and then you cook them. you eat the flesh. It's respectful. There's a kind of Christian analogy there. So yeah, Sayaka Murata, just a fascinating author. She's recently, like a few days ago, in fact, put out a new novel. So I'm very excited to read that one. But I tend to find that, like, as I'm getting older, just my taste is shifting away from things that are easily put in a genre box. I want not just horror, but horror blended with something else, or as with this author, more literature, but with hints and snippets of horror, which, I mean, it's making it in a way more difficult to host this as horror, because actually I want to be talking to people who it's like this is a bit of horror and a bit of something else. So even though I've only mentioned one author at the moment, I guess I've given you quite a lot to jump off on in terms of the content, and maybe it says a little bit about my mindset that that's where I went to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there's any kind of dry humor in there, or kind of little smirking anecdotes or whatnot, then that's clearly fed into your writing. The reason why I ask is, this book is, Daddy's Boy being a dark comedy. For people who, may not be totally familiar with your writing output, might seem like a little bit of a departure from House, from their watching Girl in the Video. Whilst House, had its jokes, I don't think you could overtly say it was as comedic a novel as Daddy's Boy. So, what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is, some people might see this who, perhaps don't know you as well as the three of us do, as a little bit of a career left turn. Where's the genesis for Daddy's Boy? Where's the comedy come from in terms of your, wanting to kind of maybe branch more in that direction than the overt scares or psychological, suspense that might have been in your other books?
Yeah, that is a huge question, and there are many kind of ways to even try and begin to unpack and to answer that one. But I mean, I've like for as long as I can remember, I've always been interested in horror and dark fiction, and I've also been interested in comedy. And I mean, even when I was at university, as well as writing horror short stories, I was writing just kind of dialogue heavy short scripts, and there was never really an intention for them to go anywhere. But they were these comedy sketches. I was purely doing that for fun. That was just like a game to me. That was like playing around with words and flexing my writing muscles. But I think for horror fiction, there was a more obvious market and a more obvious route. And so you write the stories, you submit to these genre publishers, these magazines. This is how you get into it. But there's not really a number, at least that I'm aware of purely we are a comedy publisher. So it was a kind of harder route unless I wanted to get into TV and film. And I mean, that is a hard route. That's not an easy way to go about it. And, whilst I love writing, I did also want to see something happen beyond just I've written the story. It's like, well, can we get it to an audience? So I think to begin with, because I had these two loves of horror and comedy, I thought, well, horror's the one that I'm gravitating towards a little bit more. Um, Particularly, as a heavy metal fan as well, like heavy metal and horror go hand in hand. Uh, but I've always found that if I try to write something that's horror, I can't help but throw in a few jokes. And if I try to write something that is straight comedy or commercial comedy, I can't help but get a little bit fucked up and to just take it to a point where it's like, well, can't put that on BBC One. Maybe we could on Channel 4, but yeah, that's kind of the things that I've always been doing. And I would say with each book that I've put out from, well, with the exception being They're Watching, because that was a collaboration with Bob. But if we look at The Girl in the Video and then House of Bad Memories and now Daddy's Boy, it gets more and more into comedy. It gets progressively funnier. I think that there was definitely humor and light moments in They're Watching as well, but I guess I'd put The Girl in the Video and They're Watching as a companion piece and kind of in the same mode. Whereas House of Bad Memories, that was a dark thriller with comedic elements, and now Daddy's Boy is the inverse. This is a dark comedy with moments of thriller and crime. Um, in terms of what I'm doing and where I'm going with that, I would say that Daddy's Boy is probably the most comedic piece I will write, or like I won't dial up the comedy even further if there's Daddy's Boy 2, well, which would be Daddy's Boy, comma TOO, I think would be quite nice actually. But that would have a similar level, but I don't think we'll ever go further than that. And probably going forward, a lot of the pieces that I write will be more in line with House of Bad Memories. There's a lot of jokes in there, but it is more like a kind of dark thriller, dark crime, dark horror, whatever you want to call it. In terms of why I wrote that specific piece, there's a few answers to that. So, I mean, during the composition of it, I was going through the worst time of my life. I've spoken about it on this podcast before. I've spoken about it on other podcasts before. I've spoken about it to all of you privately. That was the time when I was going through a divorce and a custody battle. It was so dark. There was not a lot of light. And I was simultaneously writing two things. There was a psychosexual thriller called Together Forever, where I was channeling all of this darkness and all of the negativity and just these really visceral emotions and feelings and putting that onto the page. And there was a lot of rage and there was a lot of hate in it. And I was also at the back of my mind, just this concept for Daddy's Boy showed up. And I was talking to my good friend John Crinan, and I told him about the two ideas. And I don't even know why Daddy's Boy came up. I just wanted to tell him, look, there's this one, Together Forever. There's about 60,000 words. We're coming towards the end. And then here's the one-page pitch for Daddy's Boy. And he was like, holy shit, that's the novel that I want to read. So I essentially wrote a 75,000 word dick joke because John Crinan said he wanted to hear that joke. Um, and I have said, I think when I was talking to Rob Olson on the Ark Party, even though on the surface it might seem like a lot of dick jokes are packed into that book, which is completely true. It is also it is also a kind of commentary on parenthood. It is a commentary on how far we will go for our family, what the limits are, what we do when we feel that we failed. So for people who know me, they will be able to look beyond the stream of sausages and actually see Bob is holding up. Like, that doesn't matter what he's holding up. Actually, listeners will just have to guess. It's a reference to something that happened off air. Thank you for that, Bob. Goodness, beyond the stream of sausages, there is like a commentary on parenthood. on, perceived failure, on what we will do to try and redeem ourselves. So for those who personally know me and the situation, it is a little bit dark and a little bit heavy, particularly if you've got that background. And I think, to bring it back to what I said about life ceremonies and Sayaka Murata, when you've got the comedy, you want to play it straight. Like, you want to have the characters, like, they believe what they're doing. They're not doing it in a slapstick way. These are real people with real emotions. So why did I write the book? One, I wrote it because John Crinan wanted to hear the joke, but also I wrote it because I was going through so much darkness. I just wanted to have a semblance of joy. I enjoyed writing Daddy's Boy so much. I think if you're going to make the reader laugh, you've got to make yourself laugh. I was laughing so much through the writing of that. Um, I recently was proofing the audiobook, and Josh Curran, who is one of the fantastic narrators, perhaps best known for The Other Stories, Hawk and Cleaver's The Other Stories, he's done such a remarkable job. And I was laughing listening to his delivery. And there were moments where I thought, am I being a complete dickhead here? Because I'm laughing at jokes. I'm the motherfucker who came up with them, and I'm like, oh, that's a fucking good one right there. It's like, you wrote that. You've heard that like 12, 13 times. But genuinely, I know that this book is divisive. I've already seen in the early reviews that it's divisive, but I love it. It's the most fun I've had writing anything. I think, in terms of my personal favorite books, it might be House of Bad Memories and Daddy's Boy. I feel that they are completely the Michael David Wilson brand of fiction. And that's me being authentic, and that's me being true to myself. And to be quite honest, even though the girl in the video is my most popular, maybe I wasn't fully being me, but now I am, and Daddy's Boy is here. So what you gonna do about that?
Well, the whole point of writing is that ultimately we write for ourselves and John Crinan, clearly in this case. But if you're not enjoying it, there's no point in doing it. And I know we've had this discussion off air and on the podcast in the past. But if you're not going to enjoy, what you're up to, then you may as well just completely not bother. So to hear you talk in such glowing terms about, your experience writing this book is something that fans of your work should be excited about, really, because it means you're finding your groove, you're finding the vein of what it is that you're writing that's going to keep you compelled and keep you doing it, and hopefully keep them, wanting more.
Yeah, yeah, and you spoke about how some might see it as a departure or a left turn, but to just really reiterate the last point I made, it's not. It's me embracing me. It's me being honest to myself. That is what you've got with Daddy's Boy. And I mean, funnily enough, I've just started working on a new project that I'm pitching. So it's set in Japan. It's kind of funny games meets From Dusk Till Dawn with some of the supernatural undertones of The Ring. And initially, I thought maybe this one will be a little bit more commercial. I think it's definitely darker, but already only a few chapters in, we got some jokes in there. Even if we're gonna have like a bleak Japanese horror, there have to be jokes. It's me. I'm not going to self-sabotage or self-censor, because what? Because I want a big publishing deal, because I want an agent, because I want it to be made into a film. Yeah, I want all of those things, but what do I want more? I want to fucking enjoy writing the story, and I want to be honest to me, and I want to write the best story that I can write and that is true to who I am. Because if I just think, well, we'll write this supernatural horror set in Japan that will sell well or will be commercial, what will we have? We'll have something generic. We'll have something soulless. I have to put my soul into it and I have to believe in it. So going forward, everything from me is going to be quirky. It's going to be dialogue heavy. And if you're surprised by that, you probably haven't been paying attention to what I've been doing anyway for the last few years.
This is an essential part of finding your voice as an author, hitting on all those little things you do best. And one of the things that's coming out of what you're saying is that if you're not enjoying the work, how on earth will you expect the reader to enjoy the work? If you're not laughing at your own jokes, no one else is going to laugh at them. And if you're not scared by what you're writing, you're not going to scare your readers. But I want to talk about, if we can move out into a broader area, about the composition of the novel. One of the things I really liked about it is it pivots kind of like almost like every like 10,000 words. You start off thinking you're kind of reading like a Carl Hiaasen, Chris Brookmeyer style kind of comedy thriller. And then it just takes like a weird left turn. And then, okay, so fair enough, this is a comedy thriller with some weird sexual kind of deep. And then you kind of take another turn and you're going, where is this novel going? So it reads like a novel that you pantsed, that like every like almost like you threw the dice every kind of like 5,000 words and went, let's go off this here. But by the time you get to the end, you've tied up so many loose strands, even ones that is a really that I'd forgotten. And I go, oh, which gives the sense that maybe you've plotted it. So I'd kind of like to hear about, did you partly pants, partly plot? Did you completely plot? Did you totally pants the whole thing?
Well, I think you might be surprised what I answered to this. I know that Bob won't because he knows my strategy. I I am definitely more of a planner than a pantser. So, I mean, before I even put a word down, I try to have a chapter by chapter plan so we know what's going in to each bit. But I've described my style as the hybrid before because what I'll do is I will plan it out, but then I give myself permission that actually if a character says we want to go down here, then I will go down there and then we'll see what the fuck happens. And then we might have to course correct. We might have to go back to the original plan. So, I mean, already with this other novel that I'm working on, I've got the chapter by chapter plan. I got to the end of chapter 2 and then a pretty central character decided actually we're going to do something else. We're going to really up the stakes. And it's like, oh shit, well, now that's happened. That could throw a few other things off. Um, and I do find that if I don't plan, or at least because it's been a long time since I haven't planned, but I often found that like I would maybe have, let's say, 20,000 words where I'm really enjoying it. And it's like, okay, well, now where the hell am I? I'm not sure where to go at this point, and really to just feel completely stuck and unmoored. And so then either I'd abandon it, which I don't recommend people abandoning their stories. I mean, if you have to as a last resort, then okay. But typically, I'd be like, well, now I've got to go back to square one and plan it. So then I might as well plan from the start, um, if that's what I'm going to do anyway. Something that I've noticed people have said about all of my work is that they couldn't plan, they couldn't predict, sorry, where it was going to go, and that I seem to have, particularly with House of Bad Memories and now Daddy's Boy, created this. I think with their watching as well, actually created this thing where it seems to start in one genre and then we pivot to another genre. And then maybe for the third act surprise, we're in another genre. Um, and, we spoke about if you want to scare the reader, scare yourself. If you want to make the reader laugh, you got to make yourself laugh. I also enjoy reading and watching books and films where I can't predict where they're going to go. I love it when there's a left turn and then we just going to go down another path. I mean, there was that 80s movie, I might get the title wrong, but it's called something like Midnight Mile, and it starts off as almost a rom-com and then it turns into a zombie apocalypse film. And it's like, where the fuck did that come from? And even for a perhaps more popular example, if you look at Kill List, it almost starts off as just this really gritty, kind of just dark, almost a thriller, or just something dark and heavy and unpleasant. But then it's like, oh, and slight spoiler for Kill List. Oh, it's the Wicker Man. What the fuck is going on here? Um, so I mean, one thing that I found difficult to begin with, and like I certainly have to put a lot of thought into it, is like, right, how the hell are we going to end this novel, this story? Because I think I'm pretty good with coming up with an interesting concept and a good opener, but it's like, how am I going to actually get this to some sort of satisfying conclusion, satisfying climax, as might be appropriate for Daddy's Boy? And I think as well, I heard when Stephen Graham Jones was talking about his approach to writing stories, and he was specifically talking about when he's got a call for an anthology, what he'll do is he'll write a list of all the ways that he doesn't want to write it, and then kind of what is left might be the answer. It's like, well, right, what actually remains here? But I I think everything I do, I try to have it have a reason. So it's like you know they say like, well, if you show the gun in the first act, you've got to fire it in the final act, and it's like, look, if you mention naked attraction on page one, then there's got to be a payoff by the end, and everything that seems innocuous, there is a purpose. There is something that is going to call back to it. And I guess this also, like everything's tying in together here, because it ties into the idea of with comedy, you're not just doing it for the laugh. There is a wider purpose. So it all comes together, as it were. So yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question there. I certainly started answering it,
But then
but
you
I've
pivoted.
forgotten what the original question was. It's like, hang on, where are we now?
We were talking about the composition of the novel,
Yes.
but then you
Yeah.
kind of, like, your conversation did exactly what the book does. Just kind of took a 90-degree turn every like 5 minutes.
Exactly. So this is
I
just
think,
being authentic. This is being me.
but I love the fact as a writer, whether you plan or not, I find most plotters have to find some way to inject spontaneity into their work, or it dies on the page, being overplanned. Equally, an awful lot of pantsers I know have to plot a little bit ahead, or they get to exactly the problem you've said. They get 20,000 words into a story, and then they're stuck. They've got no idea where it's going to go. Yeah, they have to stop and plot ahead. And, guys like Neil Gaiman and Stephen King have had that happen to them. Sorry, I should say like the probably not the best person to mention, but he's quite a famous pantser.
I mean, it's a good example in terms of pantsing as a writer, and not probably a good example of a human being. But there
No,
you go. That wasn't the point that you were making.
no.
I I think too, in terms of, you're talking about, you see by the end how some elements have all like kind of tied in and come together. What I'll do too is, I mean, like I do an quite a lot of drafts, and so one of the final stages is like, right, how can we maybe even foreshadow things a little bit more? How can we add like a little bit of color, some Easter eggs, some nods towards other things that are going on? So sometimes it might be a plot point, but other times it might even be the way that a character words something. So I think people, if they reread my work, then be like, okay, I see how he's setting up or he's foreshadowing, this particular event that happens later. So
I think
I'm
you've
a
hit something there.
mm,
'Cause you mentioned the Chekhov quote, like if you produce a gun in the first act, you have to fire it in the third. I think he's got that arse backwards. Basically, it's that you sometimes you get to the third act and you need a fucking gun, and you realize, shit, I've got to go back to the first act and put that in a drawer, produce it, so then it can be fired. So, and that's exactly what you've been talking about. You often reach the third act and think, I need a gun.
yeah, yeah. And I think as well, I try to anticipate almost it, and in a way, what might a reader be criticizing, or what might a reader say, okay, it's difficult to suspend disbelief here. And so there's one point, without spoiling, because there's no real context to what I'm about to say, but there's a gun and a character's like, how many fucking bullets does this thing have? Because it's just like insane the amount that's being fired. It's like, what is going on here? Or yeah, I like to almost call attention to, it's like, look, this isn't an error. I'm aware of what's happening.
I think one of the things that, and you mentioned it several times, is that the thing that bridges this together, especially for House of Bad Memories and Daddy's Boy, is there's a crime element there. And it's not like it's a heist or anything like that, but you have nefarious people doing nefarious things, and so that's criminal. And so crime is on a sliding scale, and it's like, so you can have like really really serious crime and have it be brutal and not funny, and or any, totally serious, or you can kind of dial that back a little bit. And so with House of Bad Memories and Daddy's Boy, you've got basically essentially two crime novels, which is, crime is like a kissing cousin to horror. So it's, you're not that far off the mark from what you've been doing. It's just that these particular stories are the ones that have caught your fancy, and you have a new one that you're working on now that sounds more, supernatural and things like, that set in Japan, and it's a little bit more okay. You know the the whole thing is, it's like, are you getting away from horror? No, you're doing what you want to do. I get where you're coming from. I worked for several months on a very bleak novel that it was very humorless. And when I got the edits back for the Small Hours, releasing June 24th from Ghoulish, I found that my love for something that was actually funny, because this is a horror comedy, and it made me want to write something a little bit lighter fare. Because the everything in the world right now is just going so cheerily and so happily and so smoothly, and I'm lying through my fucking teeth right now. So I got tired of the bleak. So I had to I didn't abandon the bleak. I just put the bleak on the back burner. I'm like, no, no, no. We'll come back to you later. I can't do it. So I get where you're coming from. You know, you went through something that a lot of people have had to go through, but for you, it's a personal thing. Just like if I had some trauma in my life, it would be a personal thing. We only look at it from our perspective. And when you go through something that's traumatic, sometimes you just want to fucking laugh. And that's. So if anybody criticizes you because, Michael David Wilson isn't horror anymore, no, Sometimes you just got to flip that coin over and show the other side of it. And I think that's I don't think you'll get criticized for it. You got to have many irons out in the fire. You know, Going back to what Jasper was talking about, I can confirm that Michael is a planner because when we had to write They're Watching, he started to outline on it. And it was very detailed, more detailed than I like to go into because I'm a pantser. So I had to learn how to construct an outline. And my first couple of efforts were not very good. I felt like Michael would write several paragraphs of stuff. And then my contribution would be 3 lines. He got in the car, he drove away, just really kind of, hey, let's just make it like a loose and everything like that. It's like, no, where are we going? What are we doing? What time is it? Where's the day? And I'm like, who cares? We're fucking in a car, But it's made me become aware of where I'm at in the story. So as a pantser, I do have to have some like initial notes because I've been there at 20, 25,000 words. Like, where in the fuck I go now? I need a gun. I need something. I need a dead body to fall through the roof. I need something to shock this fucker back into life. A plan would have helped.
Yeah, there's so many points and places that I could jump off from there. I'll start by saying I don't think you're a bad planner, Bob. So let's get that out the way. And like everybody has their own individual and unique method. So you do what works for you. If it works for you, then by default, by definition, then it is a success. Then it is a good plan. Um, the most unfortunate thing for you was that your collaborator happened to be me, and I like question and I scrutinize and I'm very pedantic. And Dan Howarth, who has worked with me, is gonna be like, yeah, Jesus Christ, he is a pedant. So
Oh, yes.
yeah,
The biggest.
but what we did with their watching, I'm so happy with. I'm so tremendously proud of. I think it's a fantastic novel, and the great thing with a collaboration is you have to work on something that you would never have done on your own. Without us combining, it wouldn't have turned out how it did, and so it was an absolute success. And if people haven't read it, then they should go out, they should buy it, they should read it, but listen to this episode first because there's going to be gold. So there you go. But the other points that you made, so you mentioned about me kind of pivoting into crime and horror being connected. I mean, I think that I've always gravitated towards crime fiction combined with horror. And I mean, even if you look at the girl in the video, there are elements of crime there too. My favorite type of horror to write is certainly more grounded in reality rather than the supernatural. Well, with that being the case, it's probably going to skewer towards crime anyway, because you got messed up people doing things and they ain't legal. So it's going to go into that crime genre. But I have created the situation where what I'm doing, as I say, it's not traditional horror, but it's not traditional crime either. It's not a heist. It's not a police procedural. It is characters doing criminal things, but it's not traditional crime fiction, which honestly is my favorite type of crime fiction. I mean, Dan Howarth introduced me a good few years ago now to Will Carver. You could argue that he's writing crime, but it's not the type of crime fiction that you would kind of think about if somebody said this is a crime fiction book. The same with John Niven. He is writing books where there are characters committing crimes, but it's not really crime fiction. And then to go back to the new novel that I'm working on, initially I did loosely plan out a more traditional Japanese supernatural horror. And I looked at it and I thought that it's a good story, but it's not an authentically me story for this time and for this place and for where I am. I actually thought it was the nearest thing I'd planned out to their watching, apart from their watching, which is the nearest thing I've planned out to their watching. It's very like their watching, in fact. So, in fact, this supernatural J horror that I originally had could be a good thing to work on with you, Bob, at some point, because it's actually, it's got that commonality to their watching. But I thought, well, it's not quite working. So what if I took some of the essence of this idea, but turned it into something that is more me? And so I just started bullet pointing what do I love to write? And so one of the top things was like kind of crimes gone wrong, comedy of errors. Like I think I don't just like writing about criminals. I like writing about incompetent criminals. It's far more exciting to write about crimes gone wrong. The other thing was, well, it has to be dialogue heavy. There has to be some humor. And as soon as I just wrote these points down, it's like, how can I turn this so-called supernatural horror into something that actually ticks all the boxes for me? I just unlocked it and was like, yes, now I am in it. Now I am enjoying it. So the message here, and a message that we often give on This Is Horror, is you have to embrace your own joy. You have to find joy in the pursuit of writing, because if you do that, you win every time. And it's so important, and it's such a long game anyway. If you're writing primarily to make money, but you're not enjoying what you're doing, then you might as well be doing something where you've got a much higher return rate anyway. You might as well become a lawyer or an accountant or a doctor. I mean, you have to go and get a degree, but do your 7 years at medical school and then and then come back. But writing just for the money, it's a bad idea. We want to make money. This is a business. We have families to feed. Jasper, last time he was on, mentioned that his children were knocking on the doors and had been locked in a shed or something. But he still has to feed them. He still has to go to the shed periodically. So yeah, but I think I've lost the point a little bit there. I got excited about Jasper's free time pursuits.
They've left the
But I
shed now.
do write crime. What was that, Jasper?
They've left the shed now. I can confirm this.
Okay, so that's
They've gone feral.
fantastic.
Speaking of incompetent criminals, Jasper, yeah, you've let them out now. One thing I was going to ask Michael is, so you've talked about how the next book is going to be like a J horror mashup set in Japan. Why is this book set in the UK when you haven't lived there for a very, very long time?
Because I feel so comfortable writing about the UK, and specifically Kidderminster and that very specific area of the Midlands. I know it intimately. I spent the majority of my life living there, and I think this kind of Midlands grey wasteland is the perfect location for incompetence and incompetent criminals. I mean, you only need to go on to the Kidderminster Shuttle website and read some of the headlines to see how it is, rife with criminal mishaps, both in reality and on the page. It is a location that I am very familiar with. I think it's almost a love-hate relationship. It's like there's some affection towards Kidderminster and some affection towards also hating and taking the piss out of Kidderminster. I could imagine going forward that there will be kind of a combination of Japan set horror and books, and also Kidderminster set horror and books. These are the two locations that I feel that I know best. Um, and also, I mean, if you just look at that specific story, it is a very British story. Now, I'm not saying that it's like going to be on BBC One. It's not. It's not kind of what you think of, but it couldn't really be set anywhere else. The location and the type of people. It's a British story. It's a Kidderminster story. Even though we also go to Mona-on-Sea, which is a nod to their watching, because their watching is set in Mona-on-Sea. But to be even more obscure, we only mention that it's called Mona in the screenplay that has yet to be produced. So this is some next level kind of self wanking, self-referencing. But it is set in the same place as House of Bad Memories and the same place as they're watching.
Can I talk to you about the voice of the novel? Because of all the stuff that I've read of yours, this one has the most distinctive voice, like authorial voice. So, one, can I ask, did you know right from the word go it was going to be in the first person? How easy and how quick did you find the authorial voice as you were writing? And lastly, how close to your own voice as Michael David Wilson do you think it is? How close is Wentworth to you?
So, I mean, I knew pretty much from the start that it was going to be in the first person, and I actually find first person past tense to be the easiest mode for me to write in. It just comes very naturally to me. Um, I mean, the two projects that I'm working on at the moment, I do have a collaborative novel with John Crinan, who was mentioned previously. This is like a wild, magical yakuza set in a sleep cafe in Japan. That's kind of if Ryu and Haruki Murakami wrote a book together that was directed by Takashi Miike and Quentin Tarantino. So that one that one at the moment is in the first person present, which is not what I gravitate towards normally, but the voice just kind of emerged to me for the first page, and it's like, well, that's what we're going with. Um, but if I look at then the other novel that I mentioned that I'm working on, that is back to first person past, as was the case with this one with Wentworth. And the first page in that first chapter is always so important to me to like get right and to nail and to almost be seductive and to reel the reader in. So I like to kind of have it conversational, and I like to have it light, but at the same time have some humor to it. So often the concept will come first for the first page, and then I'll just like mess around with different modes of delivery. I mean the latest one, yeah, I had to start the first page about 5 times until I realized this is the hook. Because I mean, for a reader or an editor or whoever, if you don't get that first line or that first paragraph right, you might not have them for anything else. So it did come incredibly easy for me in terms of how close Wentworth's voice is to me, and then how close Wentworth is to me. I mean, they're two different different answers there. In terms of the voice, I feel that each protagonist's voice is almost like a variation on my own voice, but there have been people who have read my work and they listen to the podcast and they're like, I couldn't help but hear it in your voice while I was reading it. And so I do think that there's quite a lot in terms of the cadence and the way that I will phrase things that is similar to my own voice. In terms of how similar Wentworth is to me, I think with each of my characters, there are parts of me, there are even sometimes autobiographical details of me that will go in. So it's almost like this is an exaggeration of some sides of me, and some things will be dialed up in one way, some things will be dialed up in other ways. There are things that both Wentworth and Norman, the other protagonist, do and feel that are true to how I feel. But I think, like Graham Joyce said when we had the live event with him at Warwick, about what 12 years or so ago now, that there are bits of his fiction that really happened. There are things that he made up, and it might surprise you to find out that the things that you think, oh, well, that definitely happened, that was the more mundane bit that was made up. And then the bits that you think are made up, they really happened. As I say this, though, I realize that Daddy's Boy is the one book where perhaps that doesn't apply as much as other things. There are definitely bits that I made up that did not actually happen, but you can guess which bits those are for yourself. I will never admit to what did or didn't happen that is on the page. We've gone silent. This is
I
like
was going to wait for Bob to jump in.
Jasper's tactic to be like, no, if I go quiet, you have to admit. It's like, okay, I did get that meaty hog out. Fine.
And did you ever drop a brick in a moment of panic?
Did I ever drop a brick to mark my territory? I think people have to let people know that this is their house that they're in at the moment, and you got to do what you got to do. And I hope that because we're dropping these bricks of of information about the text without giving any context, that it will intrigue and it will pique people's interest. It's like, I don't know entirely what they're talking about and what's going on, but I want to read Daddy's Boy, and you can May 6th. Paperback, ebook, and audiobook, fantastically narrated by Josh Curran. Was there another part of your question, Jasper, that I didn't answer?
No, I thought you answered the question perfectly. So I was kind of going to hand off to one of my co-hosts, but then it looks as though I've been left floundering.
We were waiting for your follow-up, Jasper. That was all. We were giving you the space, the room to breathe, mate. Don't you worry.
Which was very, very kind of you, and tremendously thoughtful.
So Michael, in terms of the writers that you're looking to at the moment, we've talked about kind of, you've touched on like Chuck a little bit, John Niven, Will Carver. In terms of comedy influences, rather than, solely kind of authors that you've been inspired by, where would you pitch kind of your sense of humor in terms of TV shows or stand-up comedians, podcasts, whatever it may be, which whatever form you're imbibing your comedy in these days?
So, I mean, in terms of trying to pitch what is my humor most like, or what is my fiction most like, I
Yeah,
mean,
I'd say what's feeding into your work at the moment then, in terms of what shaped your sense of humor, what speaks to you that's currently out there.
yeah, I think in terms of feeding my sense of humor, that's tremendously difficult to answer that, but with that specific wording. Oh, here we go, it's the fucking pedant again. I warned everyone. But in terms,
I think you'll find I warned people, didn't I? Telling
well,
them that you were the absolute worst. But yeah.
well, I like to take credit for
Is that like
things
the
that
third
you do,
page?
Dan.
We were talking about plotters and pantsers. Is the kind of final part of that triumvirate kind of like the pedant? Are you a plotter or a pedant? And do
Yeah.
you ever get off the starting blocks if you are a pedant? Can I ask?
Well,
Probably can't agree on the formatting before you even start typing, I'd imagine.
Can I ask a question? One of the huge ongoing gags throughout the whole thing is the program. I thought it was just a UK only kind of phenomenon, naked attraction. So obviously you live in Japan, Bob. You're on the other side of the Atlantic to us. Like, is naked attraction like just a British phenomenon, or is it like a worldwide kind of like plague?
do you want me or do you want Bob to answer
Both
that?
of you.
Because I've done some research into this, but I'd be
Both of you.
curious
I'd
to
like to know.
hear Bob's
I'll give you.
response to begin with.
I'll give you my response, and then Michael will give you the real answer. Is naked attraction just like porn?
It's
No, it isn't. It is a high art
Okay.
form.
Okay.
Haven't you
So
read
so
his book?
then if you're talking about a specific thing, then I'm not familiar with
right.
naked attraction specifically.
It's like the
But
dating
in a
game.
general sense, then
Like,
yes, I am a fan of naked attractions.
For fuck's sake, Bob. Moving on. So, Naked Attraction is a popular TV show in the UK, which you will find that there is a point in the book where I organically get a character to explain exactly the format of Naked Attraction for those who are not familiar. But it has also been licensed to a number of other countries. So there are some international versions of it. It the UK version has also been broadcast briefly in America, and then there were so many complaints about the nudity that it got removed very quickly. So it is predominantly, or at least primarily, a British phenomena. But I felt that the concept of naked attraction is pretty easy to explain, and I do explain that in the book. I mean, you've essentially got a clothed person looking for a potential partner. There are 6 potential partners. They are all naked, and little by little, parts of their body is revealed, and they are also asked questions as the person trying to find the partner eliminates people based on the attractiveness of their naked parts and also the quality of answer to their questions, though I suspect that it is probably more the former than the latter, that most of the people competing on Naked Attraction are primarily judging their partner on. But I think even if you don't know Naked Attraction, I mean, even the name of the show conjures up an image. I think it's quite humorous, and I think that people reading the book get it fairly quickly. There's nobody who's like reviewed or a beta reader who said, I'm sorry, but you didn't sufficiently explain naked attraction and it took me out of the story." So there's your naked attraction answer. In terms of going back to Dan Howarth's original question, so I mean, I've had people compare my work to Guy Ritchie and Quentin Tarantino before, which I think is the highest compliment that somebody could really give. I
Yep.
think in terms of influence, or in terms of just something that I thought, wow, that really captures the spirit as to what I want to do. when I saw the television version on Netflix of Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman, I thought, oh my God, that is what I want to do with my writing. That is the nearest anything has come to a Michael David Wilson book in television or movie form. So that is the absolute pinnacle. If I talk about what kind of feeds in, or who were the comedians, or what are the shows that I enjoy, I love Inside Number 9. That's probably my favorite television show. Black Mirror is very, very good too. I think Inside Number 9 is nearer my vision in terms of what I would like to see in the world, but Black Mirror is absolutely brilliant too. And I recently saw an episode from the previous season. God, it was called something like Demon 79. And essentially somebody accidentally summons a demon, but the demon looks like the lead singer of Boney M, because they've been watching a lot of Boney M videos, and I thought, oh my God, this is exactly the kind of weird, dark fiction and dark comedy that I like to do, because they're playing everything straight, but the demon throughout the entire 90-minute episode looks like the lead singer from Boney M. And it's also their first time on the job, but they're playing it straight. So that was absolutely wonderful. So I think those are the things that are nearest to what I like to do. And then in terms of like, other comedies, like, I mean, Dan knows that I love Peep Show. So Peep Show is
The greatest.
an incredible comedy. I think Curb Your Enthusiasm is almost as near to an American version of Peep Show as we've had. It's much better than when did you ever see when they released one pilot episode of an American version of Peep Show, and it's one of the worst things to have ever been done.
Edit this out, Michael. We don't speak of that abomination.
Okay. And I love Ricky Gervais's The Office. I think that's fantastic. The UK version of The Office. I am always interested in whatever television series Ricky Gervais puts out. I mean, there's varying degrees of quality, but there's always something of interest and something that I enjoy about just his mode of kind of tackling, I suppose, social issues and putting out TV shows. This is not so much about a direct influence, but this is just, you're asking me about what comedy I enjoy, and like it's almost so obvious that it's almost not worth answering. Like, yeah, I like George Carlin and Jim Jeffries. Fucking Jim Jeffries, what a legend. And Bill Higgs. Anybody who's like doing edgy stand up, I'm probably a fan of.
Because one of the ones that you haven't mentioned that I sprung to mind with me with Norman, with the kind of deep obsession of his character, would have been League of Gentlemen. To be honest, I could imagine him very much living not in Kidderminster but in Royston Vasey.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think sometimes, like, I lazily or I accidentally, when I mention Inside Number 9, almost like put it with League of Gentlemen. I mean, I know that they're distinct modes. And even Psychoville as well. But what I thought you were going to say, Dan, and what we haven't mentioned is obviously there's some commonalities between Norman and Frank Gallagher from Shameless, and that's something that has come up quite a lot. And I will admit that, like, I'd watched quite a lot of Shameless around that time too. So I think that was actually the most direct influence I've had, just in terms of like this kind of waster. I think Brian Asman in his blurb described Daddy's Boy as a slice of slacker noir, and I thought, yeah, that is the genre. That is what I'm doing. Is a comedy of errors. It's a comedy of utter incompetence, and it is slacker noir. It is these absolute wasters getting in more trouble from just stupid ideas, stupid situations that they could easily avoid. And that they keep doubling down because of their loyalty, or because of their misguided idea that this might work out okay.
Michael, can we segue from talking about TV shows? And you mentioned previously, like, you would love to see some of your work as a film. If you had your ideal cast, if you were casting Wentworth and Norman and Amanda and Cummy Ian and Colin, could you give us like a few like dream actors you'd love to see in those roles?
Oh my goodness, it it depends too. Like, would this be a British version? Would this be like, because often like it turns into an American version when you get something made into, so
Nah, ignore that. They're wrecking enough stuff in the world at the
I
moment.
reckon
Let's keep it.
enough
Let's keep
stuff.
it British.
Goodness, like I can't believe that this isn't something I've thought a lot about. But let me think.
What did
Like
the yeah.
I'm trying to think who they would play, but I definitely want Michael Smiley and Steve Oram
Oh,
involved
yeah.
in this in some way. But I just have to decide, like, if Michael Caine could grow his hair out a bit and play Tricky Ricky, I think that would be wonderful. Um, God, who would you get? I mean, can Emma Stone do a British accent? Because we do describe Wesker's sister as a coked up Emma Stone. So, I mean, the idea is there already on the page. Oh God, maybe Steve Coogan could play Norman.
Oh yeah. Oh,
He he's like got pretty good, particularly in his later years of playing these kind of older waster characters. I think he could do some justice.
his
I'm
first
try-
character, way back at the beginning of the 90s when he first hit the scene, as well, was called Paul somebody or other, who was like
Paul Calf, and
Paul.
he did Pauline Calf as well as the sister.
So they're like that's Norman, Shooter Brick Rick, and he's like in his youth. So yeah, Steve Coogan would be a great choice.
yeah.
He's
So then,
brilliant with accents as well, isn't he? So yeah, I'm sure he could manage it. Maybe we should tweet him or something, see if he's on board, Michael.
yeah, yeah. So then Steve Ram, he probably has to be one of the Knox brothers. So he's either Pat or Gary. Let's give him Pat, because Pat is the kind of bigger role there. Like, the younger characters, Wentworth, Ian, and Colin. I'm like, I'm trying to think who were the
What about one of the guys
one.
out of People Do Nothing? Um, have you seen that? I've got the name wrong. People Don't Do Anything, Do Nothing. It's the mockumentary about a rap group who have like a pirate radio station in a flat in the middle of Wandsworth.
Is it not some people just do nothing? Is
I
that
think that is
that's
it.
what it's
Yeah,
called, isn't it? I
one of
think
those
that's it.
stuff would be great
Yeah.
for Colin. In fact, actually,
Yeah,
Wentworth as well.
yeah. I mean, you.
Thank you for jumping in there, Dan, with that.
Have my uses sometimes. If that's correct, of course.
Um, I'm quite fascinated again by you planned all this out in advance. Did you know how many different like genres and subgenres you were actually going to cover, or as you were plotting it, did it begin to surprise you? And what was the
Yeah,
biggest thing that derailed your plotting?
I think that during, so whenever I start something, of course I have an idea as to where it's going to begin and where I ultimately want it to end up. But anything in between is fair game, and even where it will end up is normally quite loose, because as I said before, like nailing that ending can be the most difficult part. But I tend to find it's good to have an idea as to where you want to go, even if you ultimately decide to go somewhere else, because otherwise, like, you're kind of just getting in the car and you know, where are you going? Although Norman does say that's how people did it in the 80s. They just got in the car and started driving. So I I think though, like, what surprised me. So there is a moment that I added in quite late on because of some John Crinnan feedback. I'm trying to think, how can I say this so you know what I'm talking about, but without spoiling anything? So let's say that there is a contest near the end that is hinted at, and in one of the original drafts it's just hinted at, and John was like, I think you need to make them actually do this.
Okay.
So, and you know, he was like, I really thought you were going to," and like, he's like, it's just perfect, everything has been culminating towards these gentlemen doing this. And already at that point, so I'd sent it out to a number of beta readers, I already saw that it's dividing people. And you know, you don't write Daddy's Boy and think, oh, this will be a middle of the road book with no real reaction. So I knew there were going to be people that would love it and that would hate it. And the main reason for hating it would just be that, like, all of these dick jokes have got a little bit overbearing. And it's like, oh my God, you're right, John, that if I put this in, it is perfect. But at the same time, it's like if there was anyone who was nearly hating it, but they were on the edge, hang on, then they would absolutely hate it if I add this in. But I have to fucking do it. And I did. So yeah, that's probably the bit that surprised me the most. Um, you know that there weren't that many like major surprises, like that there are little surprises or little ideas that just happen throughout the composition, but I think that that contest is the big one. um there are things that kind of happen in the moment, like, you know, wouldn't it be funny if Colin's art form was like an amateur hip hop artist via TikTok? That just kind of came organically. I don't think that was in the plan, but it added some character. So I think too, I mean, if I think about House of Bad Memories and what surprised me there, like, again, it's things that happen at the end. It's normally little details that culminate in the finale, or the third act twist, or the final subgenre flip. And kind of a little bit related to what we've been saying, I find it tremendously hard to pitch my books because they often change subgenre. It's like if I write a back cover blurb, or if I'm pitching to a publisher or an agent, to do it properly, I'm almost giving a bit of the game away. And it doesn't help too that my approach to watching films and reading books is to just go in cold. I don't want to know anything. It's like, tell me the title of the film or the book and possibly one of the subgenres, and that's it. That's all I want to know. So it is difficult, and I don't know if you find this yourself, Jasper, when you have quite a lot of twists, because you want to entice people in, but you don't want to give your tricks away.
Yeah, and I write very different pitches for agents and editors than I write for general readers. But can I put you on the spot here now, as we're getting close to the end, and we want people to go away from this podcast to read Daddy's Boy. So can you give us that pitch that you find so difficult without giving away the twists? And why should we read it? You're stuck in an elevator with Steven Spielberg. Go.
Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know if Steven Spielberg is the person to to pitch it to.
Quentin Tarantino and Takeshi is you pronounce it Mike? Is that how you pronounce it?
Mike, yeah. Yeah. I mean the thing is that like normally at this point I read the kind of back cover blurb, but you added the caveat to not give anything away, and you know, I think that actually that does give it away a little bit. So probably all I would do is I would just say that the final line, which is Daddy's Boy is shameless, meets Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman with the incompetence of The Hangover. That's fucking it. That's all you need to know.
Then you can all get your dicks out and compare them.
Yeah. But we won't do that because YouTube will ban the video, unfortunately, because they're not progressive enough to allow 4 men to get their cocks out on screen to end a podcast.
We'll start a
In the US.
That's what we used to try to do, to kind of like do the like TIH. This is
But they'll
this is
ban
what
it
I'm
only in
talking
the US.
about unplanned magic. I mean, probably everyone listening is like, that was not magic. But this happens when I'm writing fiction too. Just like, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to write. But then once you write it, you commit to it, you double down, you pretend that that delete key does not exist. And that is why Andy Peters is in the book. And if that doesn't intrigue you to buy it, then I don't know what will.
along with Anna Richardson.
Yeah, Anna Richardson heavily. It is dedicated to Anna Richardson, Jeremy Corbyn, and John Crinnan. Power trio.
Fabulous use of the name Jeremy Corbyn. I won't give anything else away, but look out for that. It makes you will never look at the former Labour leader ever again.
I think the thing I'm most excited about your next book for, Michael, is which depths of British Z-list celebrities are you going to plumb next? Jeremy Corbyn aside, because we all know he's a legend. But yeah, you've really dug up some ghosts from the past. So I can't wait. You know, is there going to be some ITV weatherman from the 80s? You know, is there going to be a football pundit from 1962? Who knows? Who knows where you're going next?
Well, I mean, yeah, who knows? Not me, because that is part of the, you know, the not planned bit. I didn't write John Fashionoon must turn up in chapter 22. This is a good part for Des Lynam. So yeah,
I don't know. You are pretty meticulous. I wouldn't have ruled it out.
Yeah. Yeah, the only kind of planned people were the the contestants on Naked Attraction. And originally I was going to have like a kind of in the introduction, I was going to have a quote from a contestant called Ryan from Naked Attraction who said, I'll make you so wet you'll drip like a faulty boiler. But then I decided, just in case fucking Ryan reads this and tries to sue me, we're gonna get rid of that. I don't know what the legal stance is on just quoting a Naked Attraction contestant verbatim. But if Anna Richardson or Jeremy Corbyn or Des Lynam try to sue me, then they are known enough that I can take that hit for the publicity. But Ryan from Naked Attraction, it's a great line about the faulty boiler, but I'm not prepared to get pseudo for it.
I imagine his probation officer would not help him to sue you, to be honest, based on that quote. It's certainly not one I've ever seen, but I
But
feel like I will be unable to forget it now I've heard it.
you want to put that on the cover. That's the cover pull quote. This will make you drip like a faulty boiler.
Yeah.
I'd buy it for that reason alone.
Yeah. See, now that I've said it aloud and got that reaction, it's like, oh God, maybe I just need to re-edit the files. And it's like, right, fuck it, Ryan, try and sue me if you want. I'm in Japan, and I know because of my legal battles how difficult it will be for you to actually sue me anyway. So fucking try, big man. Dan's just staring like I'm not gonna say anything. He's like, this has descended into 2013 level. This is our podcast, and there's a reason we
Dan's
don't
actually
do it.
thinking we should end the episode right there. Just sue me, big man.
Yeah. Well, it should just end on a freeze frame of Michael
Sue me, big man.
shouting legal challenges down the camera. Safely ensconced in Japan like the coward he is. Yeah.
And then Dan's voice going, "Thank you for joining us."
This has been the last episode of This Is Horror.
Oh dear.
What a way to go.
Yeah.
Down in flames and lawsuits. Who knew?
Down in drips.
Yeah. So what John Costello would have wanted.
Yes. How true. How true.
He's not dead, by the way, for anyone listening. It does sound a little bit like God rest his soul.
I know. I was like, what?
Drowned in a leaky boiler accident or anything.
If anyone were to go that way, it would be John. I think it's probably time that we wrap up, but I'm not meant to wrap up my own show.
Oh,
So
shit,
Michael,
yeah.
thank you for joining.
Michael,
for joining me.
thank you so much for joining us. And just to reiterate, Daddy's Boy is out on May 6th. So if you're watching this late, go and buy it right now. If you're not watching this late, go and place a pre-order straight away.
Yeah, you can pre-order it on Amazon. You can.
Co-hosts Bob Pastorella and Dan Howarth. I've been Jasper Bark, and now I have to get out on my day release.
All right, I've been Michael David Wilson. I'm always Michael David Wilson. We'll see you in the next episode.